Today, we're going to talk about meditation, but we're not focusing on the benefits of meditation for folks who have established practices, the effects on stress and anxiety, and the studies around brain's ability to shift into more frequent alpha or theta states. There are plenty of resources around that and a lot of interesting content and weird routes to follow within it. If you're curious, you can go on Bing, use Bing to look up how to use Google, and then Google it. Instead, let's focus on the extremely common and under-discussed experience of meditating badly. Maybe you've never meditated and are not sure about doing it right, or you've tried meditation before but didn't feel like you were necessarily getting anywhere. But you're looking to try again because there's that one guy in your friend group or in your office or class who always talks about how amazing meditation is. He's probably the same guy who was really into bulletproof coffee in 2010 and now only drinks mate, and probably has self-diagnosed mild synesthesia, and probably, despite having a full head of hair, will want to shave his head on his 35th birthday to more thoroughly embody his spiritual idol, Tim Ferriss. Or even if you are a seasoned meditator, sometimes you probably had the experience of sitting down to meditate, setting your timer, and feeling like you didn't really meditate. You kind of just sat there and thought for your 1 or 5 or 20 minutes or whatever time you spend sitting with your eyes closed. For me, I've been doing some form of meditation, anything from simple breath work to TM, off and on, sometimes skipping close to a year at a time since I was 16. And right now, I'm on about a 100-day streak of meditating badly. Our mind is a pretty crazy place, and we don't really know how it works or have a great language for describing the internal experience of exploring it, even of just being in it. And with all the hype out there, it's easy to fall into the trap of imagining meditation as this journey where we will begin a regular practice, commit wholly to our mental well-being, become masters of our minds, silence inner anxious thoughts, emerge as a more equanimous person, thought and deed, and bring our new enlightened self back to the world to share our glowing light. And it usually isn't like that. It might go a bit more like this. You sit with a mantra or a focus or a breath, or whatever the practice you're attempting suggests. And then maybe you actually drift into a reasonably unusual mental place, unbothered by thoughts until you suddenly wonder how long it's been and kind of snap out of it. You're a bit shaken out of the thing anyway, and you're a bit rattled by the time dilation, so you cheat a little and look at the clock. It's been 7 minutes. Okay, you committed to 20, so you close your eyes again. But now you're in more of a sort of normal headspace. You think to yourself how weird it is this would happen, that your body and mind have a reflex that can suddenly yank you back from doing what you were trying to do. And that thought leads immediately to another thought. How that's kind of like when you're going to sleep and suddenly jerk awake and think, what was I doing? Oh, right, I was trying to sleep, fuck. And then with no space between that and the next thought, there comes another. That sleep thing is kind of like how you start subconsciously sabotaging a relationship as soon as it becomes clear that there is a real potential here. And the obvious next step is to make a commitment and give it a real shot with someone who has the potential to be a real partner. But for reasons you don't understand, you start pulling away at this point and rationalizing reasons why it couldn't work, or behaving coldly to them in ways noticeable enough for them to feel your distance, but just subtle enough that it's hard for them to call you out on it. Until they're unhappy enough in their relationship that they start pulling away from you, eventually having to move on with their life and letting their relationship die, leaving you with self-pity justified by the fact that they ultimately were the one to leave, but truly rooted in self-loathing around this pattern of pathologically dismantling every truly good relationship in your life because you know it was you who started to poison the relationship bit by bit, day by day. Or something like that. And this train of thought just continues, each thought linked to the last, in an uninterrupted rhythmic cacophony of internal monologue. In the moment, you are so swept up in it that you don't realize that your mind is going through the mental equivalent of an uncontrolled chain reaction, thought after thought after thought after thought after thought, and this wave that you're just thought. Oh, hey, look, it's been 20 minutes. Well, I don't feel more enlightened. I'm not sure that I'm doing this right. And that kind of experience can deter people from keeping up with the habit. But at least in my anecdotal experience, meditating badly is still worth it. Here's why. For anything like me, your mind doesn't always take it easy on you. There are parts of you lurking in your mind that can take the wheel of a train of thought if you let them, with existential malaise, obsessing over future or past concern, anxious thoughts, or just looping on a trivial failure from years ago. And if you're someone who is uncomfortable sitting with your thoughts, just kind of ill at ease in your own head, in modern life, you don't really have to ever face your own head. In a way I don't think was the case for much of human history. In today's world, we actually have the option to constantly distract ourselves from our minds and from those parts of ourselves that we would rather just not deal with. The infinite bacchanal of content that is the internet gives us an unlimited ability to have somebody else's voice in our heads. Probably for most of human history, we were forced to spend a lot more time alone in our own heads with our own thoughts because there were fewer options to drive them out. But now we can keep our mind perpetually occupied and avoid dealing with our thoughts entirely. They're still there, but we keep them at bay through this perpetual distraction. And I don't think that's a good thing. Before thinking too much about the practices and the usual stated goals of meditation that make people start a practice, it might make sense to first just go for a baseline of getting more comfortable with being alone in your mind. There are top-end benefits of meditation for really changing how you interact with your own mind, and even mid-range benefits of realizing in a visceral way those parts of your mind are like toddlers. And if you let them run around, they eventually just kind of tucker themselves out. But even if you meditate badly, and even when it doesn't necessarily feel like you're getting anywhere, being more used to sitting with your thoughts could make you less afraid to be in your own head. And that by itself is worth it. If you never did more with meditation than this, it would be a positive, life-altering practice. So even when you do what I did above and spend 10 minutes just obsessing over something about yourself you don't like instead of being able to let go of the thought and return to your mantra, you come out of the other end of that kind of intense experience okay. And you learn through having that experience in a visceral way that is different from just intellectually understanding it, that these loops and anxieties and fears themselves can't actually hurt you. And you don't need to run away from them through distraction. The more you do this, the less scary they become, which makes even this a valuable practice. And maybe once you're not afraid of them, once they are familiar and quotidian, they eventually become easier to let go of. And in periods that I've been in the habit of meditating, even badly, I have noticed that I'm less likely to be drinking to help myself sleep, or waiting to go to bed until I'm exhausted, or watching a video before I sleep. Less likely to feel like I need headphones and a podcast to get groceries or go on a run. And maybe you don't have that bit of fear about the inside of your own head like I do when I don't meditate. Maybe you do, and it's just easy to pretend you don't because we're surrounded by these tools that let us avoid confronting that discomfort. But when I intentionally make time to be in my own head to get more comfortable there, and then throughout my day start to leave more space to be in my own head, like taking a long walk without my phone, I also begin to find all the good stuff the unpredictable mind creates when you give it a little more room. Becoming more creative and freeing up more time to think about what I actually want, about how to be better, about the things that I find most interesting. Something my friend and I often say to each other is, anything worth doing is worth doing badly, which, like a lot of folksy knowledge, when taken strictly, is not a true statement. But at least for me, it's usually the reminder I need. Because I feel like if I'm going to do something, I tend to err on the side of feeling like I have to do it intensely, or having to make sure I get it right by some measure. But a lot of times, doing it badly is a lot better than not doing it at all, and may even be a necessary precursor to doing it well. In this case, with meditation, it is worth doing, and it's worth doing badly. Now, for a bit of channel housekeeping, I want to give a shout out to user Ormanus, who was the only one to find the Easter egg in the Will the AI Be Vegan video, and sent me the password. That was awesome. I reached out because I wanted to send you something as a prize, and if anyone else is wondering, what the heck, I didn't know there was an Easter egg, I mean, that's kind of the point. There might be others in other videos. There might not. I wouldn't worry about it. Anyway, if you find this stuff interesting, like or subscribe or whatever YouTube people do. I'm going to keep making these every couple of weeks.